Welcome to our latest episode of the Lebanese Physicians Podcast. And today it's sort of a episode that we will discuss in it actually, the resilience of the Lebanese people and the healthcare system in Lebanon. And this is based on the events of April 8, 2026, where again, Beirut was hit for the second time, I think, since August 4, 2020, with a mass trauma event, all within a 10-minute period of time in the middle of the day. So our guests today are Dr. Toufic Chaaban, who's an ICU or intensive care unit physician at Lebanese American University Hospital, and he is also the program director of internal medicine in that hospital. So he also trains physicians, and he can give us his assessment of also the trainee response to the events. And Dr. Cynthia Abi Khalil Jammal, who is head of nursing at which actually also again welcomed a lot of injuries this time. And as people recall, maybe on August 4, 2020, actually there was a big destruction of the hospital at that time due to its proximity to the Lebanese fort. Welcome both to the podcast.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, Khalil, for having us.
Of course, and I wish it was under different circumstances, but can you guys walk us, and maybe we'll start with Dr. Chaaban first. Can you walk us through where you were when the strikes happened on April 8?
Yeah, I was in the hospital actually. For some reason, I was in a new building that is a little bit isolated, so I didn't hear. I just knew from the calls on my phone, and then the code was activated. But before starting, as you said, Khalil, and I wish that our episodes are all positive, just like our previous episode on the accreditation and everything. But I mean, this is a situation in the country that we have to accept.
Exactly. And Cynthia, where were you when the events happened?
I was also at the hospital, and like Dr. Chaaban, I was having a meeting in a somehow isolated room underground. So I started to see that the news is hitting on my phone, and I went to the ER. The code was we were preparing to activate the code blue, or the mass casualty incident code.
So what was the first indication, Cynthia, that your hospital would be receiving casualties? Because I guess there's a system in terms of like different hospitals receive different numbers of casualties, I guess.
Normally, in some events, the FAYOC in the Ministry of Public Health, the structures that actually coordinate with the hospitals and with the emergency department and with a coordinator in each hospital, try to ask for activation of the code even before the casualties arrives. Because usually when the casualties arrives, you can evaluate the number of victims and then see if you will activate a code or you can handle it. But because we are exposed to many incidents in the past years, so there is a structure in the Ministry of Health that asks the hospitals to activate their code whenever they see that in Beirut, for example, we have like a probability of a lot of victims and a lot of casualties. So the FAYOC asked to activate for the hospitals like Lebanese Hospital Geitaoui, Hotel Dieu, AUB, and we activated even before having the first victim. So we were ready, and sadly, the hospitals in Lebanon and the staff, the nursing staff, the medical staffs are trained and have some experience in the mass casualty incident and how they react to it, sadly, because the Ministry of Public Health in the past years after August 4th and in the last war and this war and in between, they did a lot of efforts with the WHO, the Red Cross, the International Red Cross, and a lot of international organizations to prepare all the hospitals to have this kind of incident and to be prepared on a similar level, if you want, like being coordinated and having the same rules and the same way of thinking when facing a mass casualty incident.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is unfortunate because this is a recurrent event in the country, but that also makes the hospitals much better prepared to deal with such events. So, Dr. Chaaban, how quickly did things escalate from alert to full activation at your hospital?
Exactly as Cynthia said, that we were kind of advised by the Ministry of Public Health to do the full activation directly because with the scale of the strikes, it was like simultaneous strikes in densely populated areas in Beirut. So the unfortunately the number of casualty was expected. This is different from the bombing and the strikes that happen in areas that are kind of not that densely populated anymore because of previous alerts. So this was an obvious catastrophic incident because multiple strikes in different areas of Beirut. It's all like densely populated buildings. So we did activate, as Cynthia said, the full activation directly.
So Tafi, what does the first 30 to 60 minutes of a mass casualty event look like in your hospital?
And to be honest, you know, there is a mix of being ready and being like called for duty at the same time. Like, you're worried about your neighbors, your friends, your families. You don't know who got hit. You look to طلع staff, you look at the staff and you see that everybody is worried and everybody is trying in between patient and patient to call someone and to make sure if everyone they know and they love is still safe. But at the same time, I think like the sense of solidarity that you feel in the hospital where all hands are on deck and everybody is coming and everybody is willing and offering to contribute is also يعني هيك heartwarming. And since you mentioned the residents and the trainees, I think also you can see that the medical students, nursing students, pharmacy students, the residents, the fellows are all really are the first comers actually to such incidents and to the hospital, and they genuinely want to help and contribute.
Right, right. Yeah, and as we go, I'm going to ask Cynthia the next question, but I just wanted to highlight too that these events happened within 10 minutes in multiple areas in the center of Beirut during like peak working
Hours.
hours and peak traffic hours. So that's the intensity of how
And
these events
without
were.
being previously alerted, I mean, usually they do give some kind of alert to evacuate, but this time they it hit everywhere. It hits everywhere, and without previously being alerted or any evacuation.
Right. So that's why it was more of a bigger event in that case.
Yeah.
Cynthia, how are triage decisions made in that moment and who leads them? Because I remember I was in Beirut August 4th, 2020. At the time, it was more initially the mistake was like people were coming
Chaos.
in with minor injuries and they were taken care of. But probably this time people learned from that. So how were
Yeah.
triage decisions made in that moment and who was leading them?
Definitely, August 4th was like a trauma for the hospitals and for the staff. And we learned a lot after the 4th of August, and we initiated many initiatives to get more prepared because it was a bit of chaos in the hospitals and all over Beirut, and no one was really ready for such a devastating event. After August 4th, at the Lebanese Hospital Geitaoui, where I am the nursing director currently, we initiated even before the initiative of the Ministry of Public Health that came after this in maybe 2021 or 2022. We started to work with University Medical Hospital at Poitiers in France in order to be ready for any event because we felt the chaos and the triage that was not really up to what was really what we had must done at the moment. So we started this initiative with Poitiers, and then we updated our triage policy, the mass casualty incident policy, and we all the readiness, the stocks, the staff, the trainings, the drills, etc. A year or two after, the Ministry of Public Health launched with the WHO and the ICR, I don't know, the International Red Cross organization. Yeah, they launched the initiative of doing a training for all the hospital in the country, and we adjusted initially our plan that was done with Poitiers to the requirement to be aligned with the policy of the WHO and the Ministry of Public Health in the country. So as you mentioned, it was a bit of chaos in the triage at August 4th, but now, sadly but happily also, we are very organized in the triage. So we do only the walking and non-walking triage system. So people that are walking are directed to wound care if you want, or something very minor, minor initiative, minor. They take care for minor stuffs like stitching or others, and people that are not walking are directed to the ER room where they are stabilized, even if they were more or less stable after and they need to go to regular floor. At least the non-walking are all stabilized in the ER. So the triage is more organized. It's really straightforward. We do not need, also if we are in the non-working hours, if you want, and we do not have the same resources as in the middle of the day, we will be able to have a quick triage because it's easy and straightforward. We just do the non-walking and walking triage, and then we take care in the emergency department with skilled physicians and staff for the non-walking to see if they need ICU, to go to the operating room in a rush, or to saving lives, or even to be transferred to a buffer zone and then later to regular floors. So the step 2 triage, if you want, is done in the ER after the patient is assessed and the physicians and the staff took care of him. So there is a step 1, walking and non-walking, and the step 2 after the stabilization, the quick physical assessment in the ER for the non-walking.
Yes, and yeah, and how are staff mobilized so quickly, I guess, Cynthia?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
Okay, I want to say, like Dr. Chaaban already mentioned, we are really proud, and we are like really we have mixed emotions when we see that actually, even if we do not call for them, or even if we are managing in the hospital with the staff that is already present, you see that staff come directly, that people come directly to the hospital and stand there waiting for them to be called. So we are really we are proud, but we are really emotional, if you want, when we see the readiness, the resilience, the national duty that the staff have demonstrated in the past weeks and in the past year, even with the previous war. So they are ready. They are rapidly, they come. They are not sleeping without being alerted with their cell phones, always never on silent mode, with the car really parked in a way that they can leave and come to the hospital when they are called. It's really something that is good, and we are proud of our staff that are feeling really that they are on national duty now. But it's really sad to be always living with that burden, the burden of having to respond to big events at any moment.
Exactly. And at the same time, be worried about your family members and whether they are safe in that moment.
And that we also lost a lot of lives from the medical and nursing staff, and so that's also they are paying a lot of big prices for Lebanon too.
Right. Because not only family members, but also colleagues being
Yeah,
lost.
yeah.
Dr. Shaban, from an ICU perspective, so the people are triaged in the ER, and then what were the first critical decisions you had to make in the ICU to be able to absorb this mass trauma event?
So as we're talking, our emergency preparedness plan was drilled and was unfortunately tested in reality multiple times. So now the first step for us as ICU physicians is to decide on transferable patient, to transfer them directly to floor immediately to be able to receive these patients. And then we definitely go help in the ER, the resuscitation of the trauma patients and everything. At the same time, we do prepare teams, like extra teams of nursing and residents to be ready for the surge of patients. And the surge of patients we received in the ICU will be delayed like by 1, 2 hours until patients are either stabilized in the ER and transferred directly to the ICU, or they go to OR and then we receive them after OR. Now, what's most important in the ICU is to really keep track of what are the injuries, what are the ORs that were done, and did we miss any injury? And there are a lot of distracting injuries, and sometimes you take care of the obvious injury, and then you end up with other injuries that are missed. And this is the role of the tertiary survey in the trauma patients, even after they come from the OR. And, there is always the issue of, continuing the resuscitation of these patients, especially with the coagulopathy that they acquire as a trauma patients, and dealing with, also the communication with the families. So these are patients who their families are already devastated. They may have lost other family members, and you need to be kind of reassuring them, but at the same time giving them the accurate information.
Right. And so what types of injuries were most common among the critically ill patients that arrived in the ICU?
This time it was different than the pagers incident. You know that the pager incidents, they had a characteristic hand and eye injury. This time it was like the typical military trauma, okay, or blast-induced trauma. So intra-abdominal injury, intra-abdominal bleeding, pelvic fractures, and traumatic brain injuries.
Yeah, so basically head injuries, belly injuries, a lot of fractures that arrive, but that requires a lot, especially head injuries. They require a lot of like artificial respirators, ventilators, blood products, ICU bed capacity. How did you manage that bed capacity?
Honestly, at the number of critically ill patients that we received at Reza Hospital was within our capacity.
Okay.
So although we have a plan to like extra how we can create extra ICU beds if needed in some monitored areas such as the endoscopy unit, the recovery, and so on and so on. But fortunately, we didn't have to activate these. We were okay with the capacity that we had. We know that other hospitals received also even larger numbers of casualties, including all hospitals in Beirut practically. But at present, we were okay with the capacity.
Capacity. What about at Geitaoui, Cynthia?
I have the same picture here at Shaita. We had the same thing. It was under control, and we could manage the flow. We didn't have much critical patients. We had some brain injuries, big fractures, polytrauma, but we had only two critical patients that went to critical care. Other patients were managed in the regular floor with the OR being done in the same night, but a few hours after deactivating. And we didn't have to do like a surge capacity, or to do more extra beds, or to have this kind of escalation.
And if I may add, I think the coordination with the Ministry of Public Health was
Yeah.
also excellent because we received patients transferred from other hospitals after stabilization because their capacity increased. And I think having all of this centralized at the Ministry of Public Health helped also the communication in between hospitals and facilities.
Exactly,
Yes,
because yeah. Go
I'm
ahead.
totally, it's the same here. So we also received some patients that were transferred, and I think I agree with Dr. Shaban that the organization of MOPH helped us to have everything under control, and not to have to be like devastated by the flow of the patients.
And so that's part of what I was going to ask. That question, Dr. Shaban, was how do you maintain standards of care under that level of pressure? But I guess part of it is the coordination with the Ministry of Health. Anything else you want to add to that?
Preparation, definitely. Having the adequate training to start with, and having, ATLS training for key stakeholders, having the drills, and having all the newcomers like familiar with the plan. I think this is very important. And when you are in this, so you have kind of the coordination in between consultants and everything. It's something I remember like in the pager incident, we had kind of, regular rounds by all teams. You have the ortho team rounding regularly on the patients with us. You have the ophthalmo team rounding regularly, the general surgery team rounding regularly, and this kind of increase the safety net because even if you're busy and you miss something, it will be kind of picked up by another team.
Yes, basically having the consultants who are directly involved in some of the
Yeah,
surgeries that happen, rounding regularly to make sure nothing is missed
exactly.
in that
They
case.
even rounded on patients they are not consulted on. It was just, we want to screen all patients, make sure everybody is
Everybody's safe.
safe.
And Cynthia, from a nursing perspective, like what did you observe emotionally and operationally among the nursing teams?
That's really hard question because I was really moved by the readiness, the dedication of the nursing teams. They were ready like at in few minutes. I mean, I I appreciate the preparation that teams got in the past years, but it's also the dedication. And as I said, the feeling of being in a national duty for the ill people or for the critically ill people. They were ready in minutes. They were flowing to the ER, and in mass casualty incident normally. And being the nursing director, I'm the resource lead in this mass casualty plan. So I always have to struggle not to have the needed resources, but to maintain the calm in the area of where we are working, because everyone wants to really get involved to help. So we are not struggling to have the resources, rather we are struggling to keep them in the pooling area, so to be called when we need them, because of this dedication of, and they are prepared, they are really well prepared, competent, they can really assist other countries, I think now, because they have experience and well prepared. But what is really I got emotional when I see that they are beyond of the duty, and as a resource lead, I didn't have really to struggle to have them. I was struggling to get them, being just in the pooling area waiting for them to be called. So even when their homes must maybe not, even if they are displaced, I mean, or their families are in risks, or you find them here ready to support beyond the call of duty.
Right. Yeah. I mean, nurses actually also spend, I think doctors treat the patients, but nurses also spend a lot, treat the patients and
Time.
also spend a lot of time with the
Yeah.
families and the patients. So how do nurses balance their technical care with the human side, such as like with the families, fear,
Mm.
uncertainty, and all the stuff?
I was thinking in the past few days that maybe when we will have a ceasefire or some kind of peace, I hope, like we did in the last war, we kept on, and we have a burn center at the Lebanese Hospital Geitaoui, a very well known in the country burn center, one of the first, and maybe it was the only one in the past few months, so until the past few months. So even after the war ended or some ceasefire is here, the burn or the injury, the victims stays here for a long time. So we are not relieved from that emotional burden when the war ends actually, because we keep on caring for the wounded, and we keep on having this emotional link, or we keep on being remembered, we keep on remembering every time what happens, because we have people that lost everything in front of our eyes every day, with this emotional burden to help the families, and not just technically by doing the dressings or by caring for wounded people, but even for absorbing their loss of homes, loss of families. Even we have some children, some teenagers that have lost everything. I mean, and this is a burden, and we should think about mental health for the staff in Lebanon more and more, for how we must support them. But what really was different this time from other events is, usually in the 4th of August or even in the pager incident, we had Lebanese people with their culture trying to go into the ER scene when the incident was, when the code is activated, and we struggled to have the security explain to them that they must be outside, etc. This event, we really, the people, maybe with all what we are being through, they are more like calm and educated to that than when they arrived, and they give their victims to the hospital. They stay in the family zone. They wait for any update, and they respect that a mass casualty incident is being managed there. So this was different from the past events. Even culturally and in the big society, we are coping more with rules of these incidents, with even with families.
And can you give us like one example of like resilience from the nursing staff that happened that night?
Resilience that night. I mean, we are resilient since years now, but yes, I had a nurse where she lost, and she knew when she was actually in the ER that her aunts, 3 or 4 aunts and their children are missed or they were dead actually. So, but she continues until we deactivated and then left to be with the family because they were dead, they were victims and they were deceased.
Yeah, that's one of the unfortunate things that happens in these events. Dr. Chaaban, from a trainee perspective, how are residents and interns integrated into the response?
Can you say this again, please? Sorry,
Yeah,
it was cutting.
how are residents and interns integrated into the response?
Yeah, I mean, residents are a big part of this response, yani, even whatever their specialty is. All our residents can contribute to the green zone where cold patients are being admitted and admitted, so they can help, all residents can help there. Also, the general surgery residents, ER residents, internal medicine residents, all they can contribute to the care of patients in the ER, and this is what they do. Radiology residents are instrumental because of the huge number of,
Imaging.
studies that are made. Anesthesiology residents also, they have to open multiple OR rooms at the same time, uh, which is important. Can you hear me well?
Yes, we can hear you. It's cutting slightly, but we can hear you very well.
Okay, okay, okay. So, yeah, I think the residents are really instrumental to increase the workforce and to keep continuity of care and to keep the patients safe. They are also the same like us, affected by this directly and indirectly, mentally and through their and come to the call of duty. I mean, we as graduated physicians, we know that it's our duty and we know that it's our responsibility and we'll not leave it. But also for the trainees and the residents who can maybe at some point think of maybe not coming or leaving, they never do it and they show up even before us.
And how do you prepare them as program director? How do you prepare your trainees for events like this? As program director,
Uh,
how do you prepare your trainees for events like this?
technically, we do training for all. Yeah. Technically, we do, training for all residents on the emergency preparedness plan. We did start even in the internal medicine, some trauma education, basics of trauma, series on trauma for all residents. But I think the most important is the direct and this is something that also maybe we learned through the events. But I think we opened the channels of communication with the residents directly since day one of war, that we are here, we are with you, and we want to support you in every possible way. Definitely some residents would need some specialized mental health, help, which we provide. And it's very important to keep screening residents for burnout and depression, which we already. هلا, at the same time, when you go through this once and twice, it becomes kind of للأسف كمان they are used to this with us.
And are there any acts of resilience or leadership that stood out that night from the trainee perspective? Yeah, were there any acts of resilience or leadership that stood out that night from the trainee perspective?
Yeah, definitely. There are all types of residents picking up calls instead of other residents staying, extra residents staying in the hospital and everything. Residents rushing after the control of the crowd to donate. I had a resident in the ER who the news kept coming for him about losing friends and people he knows, and he was definitely emotional, but he just kept working, and this is something that is really to be respected.
Right, it's very hard to work under such circumstances. So, Cynthia, what was the hardest moment for you personally during this event?
The hardest was when we had a teenager coming. So when you see children that are innocent or even teenagers that are civilians innocent, having nothing to do with all this war and all the crimes that are being done. So I got emotional because of the mother that was really she was very moved and in a panic mode. And also I got emotional because I'm a mother myself. So when you think about your children, you see that nothing, no, there is no one that is safe here anymore. And you think about your families, the children, your kids in front of the children, wounded children, and you realize that no one is safe. And this is really, I got upset, but very emotional in front of this, and very depressed also to see that no one is safe here in Lebanon, not any zone, not any family. And this is truly depressing.
I hope things will change soon. Tafi, how do you process the emotional aftermath after such an event?
I guess it gives you drive somehow to stay in your ground, to continue doing the best for your community, and to get the word out. Yani I think we need people to hear and see what's happening. We shouldn't at all fall into the details of did they target someone here or not? Was it expected or not? This is not the point. The point is that people are being hit hard by a huge military force of the IOF. And whatever the justification is, it's not a justification. So I think like really focusing on what is in our control and not really I try as much as I can when I process this is to see how can I help instead of focusing on what is out of my control. What is in my control is to stay here, is to continue providing support whenever I can, is to train physicians also to provide support. This is something in my control. What my control is to get the word out, and that's why we try at least. And the rest is probably, I have to say that when it comes to our hospitals, yani in, in LAU or what else, it's a surge and then it goes away. What I can't imagine is how hospitals in south of Lebanon and hospitals in Dahi are dealing with this as a continuous flow of events and continuous flow of patients. And, like everybody is willing to help, but sustaining this with the staff and with the residents and with the nurses and with the physicians really needs a lot of a driving force.
Right, exactly. Sustaining it is very hard. Cynthia, what are the key lessons other hospitals or countries can learn from these experiences?
Sadly, we can give lessons now. I think that the preparation at the national level is something that it's a key lesson. It's something that all countries that may have a kind of instability can learn from our experience. So we got all the hospitals in Lebanon got prepared in the same vision, with the same tools, if you want, with the same strategy to respond. So that is something that is very important when we face an event that is not a national event, or even in a big region. I mean, in a vast region. Second, physician and critical care staff and emergency staff have undergone many sessions in trauma response. That's also, other than being prepared for the mass casualty response, having some knowledge in how to respond for trauma patients is something that was really beneficial to our hospitals and to our staff. And these preparations and the coordination with the MOPH and the FAOC room, and having someone that can guide people to a hospital, then guide the others to other hospitals, not to overwhelm one emergency department or one hospital, is something. This management of the victims also to the hospitals is very important, and a very important key lesson, not to being overcrowded and stretching resources in one hospital, not in another. And then the resilience of the Lebanese caregivers, their call of duty, their engagement, for their countries, and being there to care, not even asking who is right and who is wrong, whether this is a civilian or whether this is I don't know, someone that was fighting somewhere in Lebanon, or who's right now. Is the negotiation the right thing to do, or continue to fight is the right way to do? We never ask. We never give our opinion. We never ask for the opinion that for the victims that we are caring for. So this is really a lesson also to overcome every age, every I mean, even if you are upset, even if you are in fear. So if you are a caregiver, you should overcome all the feelings that you have, all your opinions, and be scientific in front of the event, have the skills you are prepared for, have the competency you developed, and only care. But the thing that I always think about is how much longer can we endure this? I mean, me, even myself, I have experience in the last few years as a nursing leader, many challenges from COVID to the blast of 4th of to the 4th of August, to the wars, to every security incident. And at every time I say that maybe in the next war or the next incident I will not be here, but I'm still here. But how much more one heart or a heart of a country can carry, and how longer can we endure this as caregivers? At the personal level, I always ask myself, how long can we endure to have our lives and the lives of our families in danger all the time? But we have another point of view to say that our country needs us. So this is always a battle, an inside battle, and the resilience is good, but we are also human beings that are really depressed and overwhelmed by our feelings.
Right, and it's a. I mean, you have done tremendous work over the past 6 to 7 years with everything that's passed in Lebanon, and yeah, I understand these feelings, and these are the feelings you have. Like you endure it because you want to serve your country, but at the same time, you're like, this is repeated
If you
events.
permit, I want to add something. The day we care for the victims and we activate our mass casualty code plan, you see that the other day we continue to have them going to the OR and to care for them, but the leadership is also it continues. I mean, the projects, the accreditation projects, all the project. We continue to hope to live as if nothing is happening. We continue to plan. I mean, this is also a key lesson for other countries or other people in the Middle East or even in the world, that we may face incident or war, and we listen to the MK and we listen to the bombs, and we see, it's happening now, and then you see that we continue to plan, we continue to have the improvement projects in our hospital, we continue to work as if nothing is happening, as if all is good, and to be ready and alert for any big issue. So this is also a resilience or a key lesson, or the strength of the caregivers and the leadership in the hospitals and the physicians and our people, if you want, our Lebanese citizens and people.
Right, exactly. And this is one of the episodes which I had with Dr. Chaaban a number of months ago about the ACGME international accreditation that they were able to get for the residency program despite everything that's happening. So they moved forward with that and did not
Exactly.
get stuck in some of the events that were happening at that time. And I think this is part of hope, I guess, just
Mhm.
keep moving forward. Dr. Chaaban, in one sentence, what does April 8th represent to you as a healthcare professional?
I would say is our values at test.
Yeah, the values being tested, and that was, I think, Cynthia, you just talked to that just a bit ago. Cynthia, what message would you want the world to hear about healthcare workers in Beirut today?
I want to say hats off for the caregivers, for the nurses and physicians, for their resilience, for their standing for their national duty, for having all the opportunities to leave with all the skills they have, for the passport that they have. I mean, their competency as caregivers and the education they get in Lebanon. This is a passport, and they are asked for everywhere in the world. They are needed everywhere in Europe, in USA, in Canada, in the Gulf. and you are, and we are proud of the physicians and the caregivers that are there in other countries, and you know that they want our skills everywhere in the world. Still, the ones that choose to stay, I want to say that hats off to them, respect, and let the world hear that we have caregivers in Lebanon that are still fighting here, like militaries, like all that fights for their lives, and like those that save the country even in military. We have the same, I feel that we have the same importance and the same national duty today. We are choosing to stay, we are choosing to fight, we are choosing to care, regardless of the situation, regardless of our opinion, regardless of who are the victims that we are caring for. So respect for their resilience, for their strength, for their competency, for their preparedness, and all the world should really recognize their worth, their strength, and their resilience. I feel like I want to shout to the entire world that what's happening is not fair, and that we are paying as caregivers a lot of the biggest price, and we are still standing strong for our country.
Right. I mean, I think it's easy. Like in medicine, you always talk about preparedness, protocols, simulations, checklists. But when you're tested, is when like you go from preparedness to can I do it? Am I able to sustain? And I think the caregivers in Lebanon have proven time and time again that they're able to take that burden and go, as we discussed, go over all like political issues and just try to serve the people, whoever these people are who have been affected by this trauma. So I hope like the people who stayed, and both of you, I think, is great respect to you and to all the work that you do and to all the courage that you've done to, and I think you inspire a lot of healthcare workers all around because of that. Thank you very much for being on the podcast.
Thank you, Khalil. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Doctor, for helping us shout to the world our daily struggles. And thank you for this episode, because really it's also a sign of respect for our efforts here.
Yes, and thanks to you for being here and taking the time to do that episode with us. Thank you.
Always a pleasure. Thank you, Doctor.